Right, we're gonna check out something straight out of Japan about the unbelievably incompetence of Japan's worst doctor. So let me turn these off and let's get to it.
Never give up on your dreams, no matter how many times you fail. One Japanese man took this message to heart. The only issue was, his dream was to be a brain surgeon. And no matter how hard he tried, he just sucked at it. But that didn't stop him. He would never give up. No matter how many procedures he screwed up, no matter how many lives he ruined, he would be a surgeon. It's July 2019, and Matsui Hiroki has just been hired by Akko City Hospital, the only hospital in, well, Akko City. Akko is one of those small Japanese towns with not a lot going on.
Akko City.
The biggest landmarks are the train station,
Sounds
a
familiar to
shrine,
me.
and the ruins of an old castle. Matsui had been recruited by Dr. Chiba, Akko's top neurosurgeon, who was impressed by his experience at Kyoto Memorial, a big hospital. While Matsui had technically never performed a surgery, Dr. Chiba was convinced that under his mentorship, Matsui could be a huge asset for his struggling hospital.
Okay, sorry, what? How can you even do that? I have friends who are currently studying to be, what do you call them? At least those who are supposed to help ladies carry the baby to term. They have to help deliver a child first before performing anything whatsoever. And they do that for years before even being allowed to do a delivery themselves. So let alone that and actually treating a live patient for brain surgery. But okay, Japan, I know that you tend to do things a little bit differently, but...
Matsui, with cutting-edge techniques and 200 surgeries under his belt, as an assistant surgeon that is, leaves such a strong impression on Chiba that he immediately puts Matsui on his neurosurgery team. In his first week, Matsui is going to be the chief surgeon on a major operation, a brain tumor removal on a 30-year-old patient. Not only is the surgery a complete success, but Matsui completes it in record time.
Wow.
In the operating room, he insists that the surgical staff literally give him a round of applause for his achievement. Dr. Chiba is extremely impressed. But in the post-operative review, Chiba realizes the reason Matsui finished the procedure so quickly is because he only removed 20% of the tumor. Now, Chiba has to perform a second surgery just to clean up Matsui's mess, and fortunately the patient does go on to make a full recovery. For this story, that counts as a happy ending. Now, did Matsui...
Okay, 27%. I'm inflating the numbers already. 20% of the surgery done and you get to continue. He would have been sent out. Back to school to learn again. Like, revoke his residency or whatever.
Learn anything from this mistake? No, actually he didn't even show up to the second operation. He apparently had something more important to do than brain surgery. This should have been Dr. Chiba's first hint that something was wrong, but instead he decides to cut Matsui some slack. Starting any new job is hard, especially when that job is, again, brain surgery. Dr. Chiba had a good feeling about Matsui, and he knew everything was going to work out in the end.
Well, that's a bad gut feeling.
2 months later, Matsui seems to be getting the hang of things, so it was time for another surgery. This time, Matsui would prove himself. Matsui's first case upon his return is an 83-year-old man presenting with paralysis below the waist. Matsui's diagnosis is hydrocephalus. Basically, the guy's got fluid in his brain. Is this diagnosis backed up by any tests? No, but it's fine. Just trust him, bro. Matsui tells the patient that surgery is going to fix all his problems and get him walking again. Okay, so the old man still can't walk after the surgery. Not only that, but now he can't even swallow, meaning that Matsui has done some serious damage.
Oh my god. Okay. Listen. There are certain people in this world who deserve a spanking. A beating even. This one is front row seat. How? How did they let this happen?
But Matsui just shrugs. I mean, it's not his fault, and there's nothing anyone could have done.
What do you mean?
That was his new catchphrase. By this point, Dr. Chiba was starting to get a little concerned. He conducts a review of Matsui's cases, and what he finds shocks him. For one, Matsui was finding, or more like scouting, his surgical prospects during outpatient visits. Matsui's basically a used car salesman for brain surgeries. He'd diagnose the patients based more on gut feel than tests or evidence, sell them on the idea that his surgery would solve all of their issues, and then schedule them into the OR as soon as possible. None of that boring pharmacology stuff. Matsui just wanted to play Operation.
Oh man,
but Chiba isn't a confrontational guy, and he did, after all, hire Matsui, so he decides to just wait and see for now.
This is the weird thing. I want to discredit this to Japan's way of operating sometimes. There is this non-confrontational nature in many things, both from the position of the worker and the employee sometimes. I've heard from people who have traveled abroad to work as either English teachers and or other positions that quitting your job is very, very freaking difficult. Already there is this whole tradition of you need to work in a company. The company is kind of like your family already. So you're partaking in like a lot of activities and all that. It's kind of like a mandatory thing to do with your co-workers. So that's already kind of like, why do I constantly need to seek your approval before I make a decision? So much collectivism without this. But you cannot stand out, right? That's an entire Japanese motto. The hammer that sticks out must be hammered down. No, the nail that sticks out must be hammered down. There's a whole thing about that. But then even as a boss, to not question the workings of a person that you deem has the qualification is asinine, especially within the medical field. Like, what the fuck?
A couple days later, Matsui treats a 43-year-old man with chronic nerve pain in his face. Matsui drills a small hole in the patient's skull to relieve pressure on the compressed nerve. Sounds simple, right?
No! I wouldn't trust him with anything.
Nope, the patient wakes up from surgery and discovers he's now deaf on the drilled side. Once again, Matsui's response is, it wasn't the surgery. There's nothing anyone could have done. That same week, Matsui is called in to do a procedure called a clot retrieval on a 90-year-old stroke victim, Mrs. Yamada. This procedure requires him to insert a device called a catheter into the patient's cerebral artery. Matsui performs the surgery in a totally carefree manner, guiding the catheter like he's playing Subway Surfers. Mrs. Yamada suffers an intracranial bleed during the surgery and falls into a coma. Unfortunately, Mrs. Yamada would never wake up from this coma. A month later, she passed away. What's Matsui's reaction to this outcome? You guessed it, there was nothing anyone could have done. Matsui has now made 3 serious surgical errors in 8 days. For some baffling reason, Dr. Chiba still does not suspend his operating privileges.
No. Kick him.
October 3rd, Matsui is scheduled to perform a cervical laminoplasty on Mrs. Saito, a 75-year-old woman with cervical spinal canal stenosis. In English, Matsui is going to widen her spinal canal with a drill. It sounds terrifying, but this is a fairly common and safe procedure. Yeah. That is, until you remember this is Matsui we're talking about.
Let me sever your spinal cord.
Kimura, in the hospital's medical safety office, receives a call on the emergency line. She rushes to the operating room and finds Matsui in a visible state of shock. He had pierced the vertebrae at the neck, drilling directly into the spinal cord and completely severing it. The result was...
Yeah, we all guessed it. We all saw this coming. The man was just outright going to destroy her life. So she just now fucked from the head down, if she even survives.
Complete and irreversible paralysis from the neck down. He had turned Mrs. Saito into a quadriplegic. Now, would this be the thing that makes Matsui finally take responsibility for his actions? No, of course not. Instead, he desperately lashes out at everyone around him, going as far as asking Dr. Chiba to take the fall for him.
What?
And when that doesn't work, Matsui goes to his patient, or I guess his victim at this point, begging her to let him operate again to fix the issue. Yes, his solution was more surgery. She tells him to f off, so Matsui has her sent to a rehabilitation facility under the pretext that she has dementia. This is the caliber of person we're talking about here.
Wait. What is this? The freaking 70s? Where we're treating women like, oh, she has hysteria, you know? She's just a little bit demented. Send her to the psych ward. The fuck, Japan? I'm sorry, this is a strange case. I suppose that this is not happening for the vast majority of situations. But how come they not step in?
Doctor who will paralyze you, completely ruin your life, and then ship you off to some warehouse to cover up his own tracks.
Holy shit.
Just as a reminder, all of this occurred within the span of 1 month. In the time it takes for your Amazon Prime trial to expire, Matsui has killed or permanently injured 4 people.
Wow.
And he wasn't about to stop. We'll get to that.
What
But
a
first,
monster.
we have something much more important to talk about. The sponsor of today's video, War Thunder.
Okay. That is the weirdest transition to an ad that I've ever seen. For the first time ever, I'm gonna do the thing and skip this. I usually tend to watch ads for videos, but not this one. This one is just... No, this is not fitting.
Is not a good surgeon. Even from the beginning, there were a bunch of red flags that Dr. Chiba had just missed, or more likely, ignored. Like, it turns out that even before hiring him, the head of the hospital, Dr. Fuji, had actually gone to Kyoto to discuss Matsui with his former bosses. They warned Fuji that Matsui was incapable of performing even basic medical procedures like staunching blood. Not only that, everyone at Kyoto absolutely despised him and thought he was a pain in the ass. This was not a surprise to the staff at Akko. I mean, Matsui's a complete mess there, too. He frequently sneezes right over patients in the middle of surgery. His desk is a pig pen. It's covered in papers, food, and even his own socks. One time, he was MIA for a surgery.
Bro was reading haiku? Wow. Oh no. 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 No, I don't want my I don't want my professional worker spending half his time and desk covered in shonen. No. Let alone his socks. My God.
Papers, food, and even his own socks. One time, he was MIA for a surgery, and the staff found him in the parking lot showing off his new car. So why didn't anyone at Akko City Hospital stop him? Well, for some mysterious reason, Dr. Chiba simply refused to give up on Matsui. Despite everything he's witnessed, despite everything Matsui screwed up, Chiba still clung to the delusion that Matsui could be an asset to the hospital.
They must have like some familial connection. Which I'm not sure how that works in Japan. I know that happens a lot in South Korea. That whole hierarchy of power. But I'm not too familiar with that in Japan.
And not to mention, it was hard to get any surgeon to work in Akko, even a bad one.
Oh.
But Chiba wasn't the only one who dropped the ball here. Akko Hospital actually has a medical safety office formed specifically to prevent these kind of incidents. But it was an open secret that the department was a joke. Medical safety positions here are treated like cushy landing spots for retirement age employees, and the department is staffed by former nurses, led by Kimura. While their job is ostensibly to prevent accidental injuries, in reality they have a vested interest in covering up any incidents and protecting the hospital's reputation.
What?
In the end, it's actually the clinical technicians who sound the alarm on Matsui. In December, a radiology technician files a complaint against him for exposing a patient to a dangerous dose of radiation during an operation. Allegedly, multiple doctors have to drag Matsui out of the operating room as he's shouting, "I'm a surgeon! He's my patient!" After this incident, more and more technicians, and now clinical engineers, are refusing to work with Matsui, forcing Dr. Chiba to second all of his surgeries. December, Matsui performs a cervical discectomy to treat an 89-year-old man's herniated disc. After the surgery, the patient completely loses the ability to swallow. January, Matsui installs a shunt in a patient's skull.
No!
A piece of the shunt breaks through the jugular vein and ends up in the patient's heart. Dr. Chiba has to perform a revision surgery to fix Matsui's mistake again.
Oh, the pain. The pain. Oh my God. Oh my god, this is
At a New Year's party, Dr. Chiba runs across Dr.
This is a horror
Sugihara,
story.
Matsui's former mentor at Shiga Hospital. When Matsui's name comes up, Sugihara's face goes pale. "Don't you know?" he whispers. "Matsui was expelled from our neurosurgery department." Sugihara goes on to call Matsui a catastrophic neurosurgeon who treats surgery like cutting up a radish. Sugihara tells Chiba that he's actually being sued for a surgery where Matsui was his assistant. He says, "You need to get rid of him." But it's too late for Dr. Chiba. He's now completely paralyzed, a prisoner of Matsui's insane rampage. No matter what Matsui did, all Chiba could do was follow in his wake and try to pick up the pieces. January 22nd. Dr. Chiba's heart sinks when he learns that Matsui has pressured yet another patient into surgery. The patient is 74-year-old Mrs. Fukunaga, and the procedure is a laminoplasty, the same one that left Mrs. Saito paralyzed from the neck down 3 months ago. "Please let Matsui learn from his mistakes," Chiba pleads. Knowing that Matsui's grasp of anatomy is tenuous at best, Chiba tries to tell Matsui exactly what he needs to do. "Drill here," Chiba says, pointing at a vertebrae. Matsui drills, but the patient starts bleeding, constantly bleeding. He calls for more suction, but it's no use. Blood is now seeping from everywhere. Matsui is confronted by his greatest weakness, the inability to staunch bleeding, the one skill that every surgeon
is supposed to have.
The operating field is a sea of red as sweat rolls down his face. Matsui is in complete despair. He knows he has to continue the surgery, so the only thing he can do is pick a spot and drill.
Oh, that's sickening.
A sickening silence. Even Matsui can feel that something is wrong, because his drill hits something that is definitely not bone. Dr. Chiba looks over and lets out a little whimper. Matsui has made the exact same mistake as last time. He's drilled into the spinal cord, and this time the damage is so bad that the patient's nerves look like a ball of yarn. There's actually video footage of this surgery. Yes, it really looks like a ball of yarn. No, you really don't want to watch it. Trust me. The footage ends with Matsui literally just stuffing the nerves back into the hole he drilled and hoping for the best.
What?
This was Matsui's most serious surgical error yet, and it would later come back to haunt him. But for now, all he got was a slap on the wrist. A month later, he was back at it.
Oh no, in 2020, this dude proceeded all the way through COVID. Oh no, possibly just contaminating everybody he came across. Yo, this is so... It's the freaking Grim Reaper.
He's going to perform another brain tumor removal, the very first procedure he failed at Akko.
Yes, dude. You just gave the perfect comment here. This is straight up some Junji Ito shit.
Last time, Matsui had left 80% of the tumor intact, but this time he had a plan. See, Matsui treated surgery like a carnival game. Threw the ball too hard last time?
I guess.
Well, switched to underhand. Left most of the tumor intact? This time I'll keep cutting until I cut out so much healthy and functional brain tissue that it leaves the patient in a persistent vegetative state with zero hope of recovery. It's only been 8 months since Matsui started working at Akko Hospital, and he's been involved in as many serious medical errors. In 2 of the 8 cases, the patient had lost their life. This was the last straw. The hospital's entire surgical staff now straight up refuses to work with Matsui. As the chief clinical technician put it, "I don't want to be involved in another murder." The medical safety office calls the director of the hospital, Fuji, in a panic. Only now they're beginning to realize the severity of the situation and how much trouble they're in when the public finds out. Kimura, Fuji, and Chiba all start arguing and pointing fingers at each other, but there's one thing they agree on. Matsui is to immediately be banned from all surgeries. The nightmare is over. Or at least, that's what they thought.
For now.
But the story is about to get truly, truly insane. You see, Matsui was going to fight this. His dream was to be a surgeon. And
how come you escalate this situation? We've already hit rock bottom. How are you going to turn the bar? How are you going to push the bar down to hell?
He would never give up. no matter what.
Revenge.
Matsui has essentially barricaded himself in one of the hospital's conference rooms. It's been weeks since he's seen any patients, and at this point, he gives all of his instructions to nurses via text. Ako Hospital has no right to take away my surgical privileges, he angrily mutters to himself. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. Therefore, the only logical explanation is that someone at the hospital was out to get Matsui, and that person was obviously Dr. Chiba. Yes, the person who bent over backwards for him the entire time, cleaning up all of his messes, was out to get him. Matsui begins plotting his revenge. His first act is to author a report detailing every single surgical error he's made, or rather, every single surgical error he hasn't made. Matsui's report is a treasure trove of fake data and blatant lies. You see, none of his patients ever suffered any side effects, and if they did, it was in no way his fault. Most critically, Matsui places the blame for all of his errors squarely on the head of Dr. Chiba.
This is like the current media sphere, where like we can all see the things, we are all witnessing one reality, whereas some are just blatantly spewing out nonsense that we can all be like, hello, look outside the window, take away the blinds, we can all see this.
Claiming that it was all because of his lack of supervision, or in some cases, even claiming that it was Dr. Chiba actually holding the knife. Most surprisingly, perhaps out of shame or sheer resignation, Dr. Chiba actually signs off on the report. Just like that, Matsui is absolved of all responsibility by the Medical Safety Office. But it's a hollow victory, because the hospital still won't lift his surgery ban. So he needs to get creative. Matsui realizes that even under a surgery ban, he can still operate if he happens to be the only doctor around when a surgery occurs.
Oh.
One night, Dr. Chiba receives a call from the hospital. The doctor on the line is in a complete panic. Matsui was on call that night and took a patient into the OR for an emergency catheter surgery. Like a demon who's been sealed away, Matsui has escaped his prison to wreak havoc. Dr. Chiba rushes to the hospital and stops the surgery immediately, but the patient's condition still deteriorates the next day. Of course, this incident only intensifies Matsui's hatred for Dr. Chiba. After everything horrible Matsui's done so far, what he does next is so revolting, so deranged that it can only be described as pure evil. You see, Matsui decides that the best way to get back at Dr. Chiba is to drag him down to his own level. Since Matsui's banned from surgery, he follows Chiba into surgeries as his assistant, then spends the entire procedure berating Chiba and telling him that he could do better. Yeah, it's not enough that Matsui's the worst surgeon alive, he's now heckling other legitimate surgeons. Eventually, Chiba relents and gives Matsui the knife, because of course he does, and Matsui gives the patient—
What is this? Oh god, okay, this Dr. Chiba is one spineless... Funny, because, yeah, this entire video has been dealing with severed spines. One spineless asshole. Stand up for yourself, mate.
A lung contusion, because of course he does. For once, Dr. Chiba learns from his mistakes and doesn't give Matsui the knife anymore. So what does Matsui do? He gives up and reflects on his mistakes. No, just kidding, of course he doesn't. Instead, he literally barges into one of Dr. Chiba's surgeries and tries to knock the drill out of his hand so that it'll look like Dr. Chiba injured his patient. Let me repeat that. A surgeon went into an operating room in order to sabotage a surgery. But somehow it gets even worse. Somehow Matsui's not done. Not satisfied with just ruining Dr. Chiba's career, Matsui decides to sue the hospital for taking away his surgery privileges and tries to get Dr. Chiba arrested.
Oh no, that's
Remember
ridiculous.
That completely fake report Matsui wrote? Using that report, Matsui claims to be a whistleblower with evidence that Dr. Chiba was not only guilty of criminal malpractice, but that Chiba and the hospital were framing him to cover up Chiba's crimes.
And you know one of the reasons why something like this could actually work? It is because Japan has one hell of a stupid system that really does not rely on modern tech. Applying for anything, for the most part, will always be done through mail, physical paperwork. That is bonkers. Like, I've been to places where you need to do that all the time. In Spain, where my parents live, we was applying for residencia, which is the documents that you need to have so that you can have residence in the country. And that had us do insane backs and forth for weeks because we had to deliver things through paper to mail. But eventually, that got upgraded so that it is now something that is being done digitally. But over there in Japan, for the most part, it's just paper, which just leads to a bunch of fraudulent stuff being done. When you don't have a digital trace, when you don't have digital markers with, like, you know, a lot of security behind it, then what the fuck?
He goes as far as to claim that Dr. Chiba had tried to murder him by pushing him down a flight of stairs. None of this was true, of course, but due to the hospital's appeasement and cover-up of his crimes, the evidence was actually on his side. The police have no choice but to open an investigation and place Dr. Chiba under arrest. Finally, after being interrogated for hours by the police, Dr. Chiba has reached his breaking point. He releases every record he has, every single email from Matsui where he's crying, throwing a tantrum, begging Dr. Chiba to take the blame, and trying to put the fault on someone, anyone else. Matsui is utterly humiliated by this and withdraws his lawsuit, but he has one last trick up his sleeve. He goes straight to the hospital's director, Dr. Fuji, and says, "Maybe I don't have enough to bring down your hospital, but I can make everyone here's life miserable. Don't say a word about what I've done here to anyone. If you do that, you'll never see me again." Fuji is terrified, and seeing an opportunity to finally be rid of Matsui, he makes another deal with the devil.
No.
Matsui resigns. At this point, it seems like Matsui has won. Despite being the worst doctor alive, despite ruining countless lives and throwing everyone who tried to help him under the bus to save his own ass, he's gotten away scot-free. And that would be the case if he had just retired then and there. But remember, Matsui is a surgery junkie. He's a medical terrorist, and his only purpose in life is to spread malpractice and misery to as many people as he can. And that misery was finally about to catch up with him.
A literal man baby.
Matsui happily starts his new job at Suita Tokushukai Hospital, where he works in the emergency department. He's no longer a neurosurgeon, thankfully, but he plans to take a specialist exam for catheter surgeries in a few months and get right back on the saddle. Remember, this is the procedure that he botched so badly that he killed a 90-year-old patient at Akko. Within a week of Matsui arriving, something strange and incredible happens at the hospital. Everyone notices that Matsui doesn't know how to practice medicine. Then again, it's kind of hard not to notice when you're holding a patient's lips and Matsui keeps accidentally pricking your fingers with the needle instead of stitching the patient's mouth together. Yes, this actually happened. Just for fun, let's go over a few of the numerous errors Matsui made during this time.
What?
He sent a woman with a broken jaw home without treatment, attempted to administer an IV of adrenaline to a patient not in cardiac arrest before the staff stopped him.
Brother, dude, this was done 4 days apart. Just a couple of years ago.
Left used syringes contaminated with hepatitis C on a patient's bed and forgot to give a 90-year-old man dialysis for 3 days, leading to his unfortunate death. These are excerpts from 50 pages of incident reports filed against Matsui. Yeah, like I've mentioned, by some miracle, the staff at Suita don't follow the Akko playbook and sweep these accidents under the rug. In fact, Matsui quickly becomes a joke at Suita and eventually has to resign. After leaving Akko, he would never find steady employment again, just bouncing from hospital to hospital. Matsui also ends up failing the catheter exam he was practicing for. Not just because he was incompetent, but because it turns out, surprise, surprise, he fabricated dozens of surgical records. Yeah,
Right.
It turns out those 200 surgeries as an assistant was a blatant lie, and
Of
he had been in
course.
30 to 40 at most.
Yeah, and that's the problem. That's such a huge deal. This whole idea. I've had discussions about this with my partner a lot about the merits of a degree. Like, sure, it leads you to certain places, and it's like a necessary requirement for most people today to get access to a job Unfortunately, most of us, our generations, Gen Z, what am I including? From millennials onwards, it was a necessity to have that to get any type of employment. But that often leads to some, for example, getting access to something where they could have passed the bar with just a failing grade and zero expertise. Like just barely passing, not a failing grade. I have to correct myself there. Just barely passing. And you have 30 to 40 instead of 200. That's a big margin, okay? It's a big difference right there. Not to say that people don't deserve the degrees, they definitely do. I cherish mine, but you will not see me working in a laboratory right now because I have not had physics experience. I have not worked in a lab ever since 2022. So I could not qualify as a researcher. So like, what the fuck?
And his troubles didn't end there. Remember how I said Akko is a small town? Well, in small towns, people talk, and Akko Hospital had gained a local reputation as the hospital where people get worse, not better. Yeah, that's pretty fair. Naturally, the press started asking questions, and the spattering stream of reports quickly became a waterfall. The hospital's administration tried their best to quash these reports and deny any wrongdoing, but that ended as the lawsuits came in. It all ended with the hospital losing their neurosurgery accreditation for all of this mishandling of post-incident safety reviews. Oof. The walls were closing in around Matsui now. Everywhere he went, people recognized him as that really terrible doctor from Akko. The NHK even made a documentary about the string of medical incidents at Akko Hospital, where he was identified in all but name. The final nail in the coffin came with a civil suit filed by Mrs. Fukunaga, the patient who Matsui left paralyzed below the waist with his drill. Mrs. Fukunaga and her family made several media appearances, telling interviewers that Matsui's surgery left her incontinent and in constant pain.
Poor lady.
Finally, on December 29th, 2024, 5 years after his reign of terror at Akko Hospital, Matsui Hiroki was indicted and arrested for professional negligence causing injury. They finally got him.
After 5
years. As
years.
Matsui was awaiting trial, people began asking some difficult questions and getting shocking answers. Like, how could something like this, or someone like this, terrorize the healthcare system and get away with it for so long, especially in a highly developed country like Japan?
Yeah, who are always being praised for just how good the health system is. Goddamn country that has the most centenarians on the planet, right above South Korea.
Many experts believe that there's a crisis going on at rural hospitals there, where they can't attract talent and struggle just to keep the lights on. This was definitely the case at Akko Hospital. I mean, according to whistleblowers, administrators were booking as many surgeries as they could and desperately cutting costs just to stay out of the red. Other experts point to Japan's lax medical safety laws, which don't penalize surgeons or suspend their medical licenses based on the number of accidents they've caused. In fairness, it can be very difficult to determine whether a surgeon is negligent or incompetent, because every case is so different and every procedure has a different level of risk. Also, surgeries are done by a team of doctors, nurses, and technicians, so it can be hard to attribute an accident to a single person's mistake.
Right.
I mean, sometimes it's even hard to determine whether a surgery was a success or not, so it can take years and dozens of surgeries for patterns of error statistics to appear. Part of what made Matsui so hard to catch was that he wasn't making massive, isolated errors. He was, by all accounts, just really, really bad at surgery. But the most troubling part of this story isn't the systemic problems in Japanese healthcare, and it's not even the deranged monster putting his ego above the lives of innocent people. Evil exists, but it's ultimately an aberration. The vast majority of doctors are people we can and should trust. No, the most disturbing thing about today's story is that so many of those competent, experienced doctors who frankly had every motivation to speak out just stood by and did nothing, over and over again. But there's something very strange about this story. If you've heard about this case from the media, you might have noticed that there's a huge part of the story I skipped. It's because I can't cover it on YouTube. So I've explained the specifics in the follow-up video, but first, a massive thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Make sure to check out War Thunder now for free on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, or on mobile, and use my link in the description to register. If you're new or haven't played in 6 months, you'll also get a bonus pack across PC and console with multiple premium vehicles, in-game currency, and more.
I gotta give it to him. These transitions are fucking insane, dude. Saving face is a horrible cultural quirk. It is. The college degree for a job is a freaking nightmare. After that, the most employees asking for a job experience. How the hell does a fresh grad have a job experience at that point? And it always puts youngsters in like this weird loop of, oh, you need these many years of experience, but you also need to have the degree to pass that, to have access to the very job that needs experience for. Like, how do I achieve any of that? It's impossible. And now, of course, today we have the whole nonsense there with AI and people trying... Oh, somebody's playing Stellar Blade. And this whole nonsense of how it is that college graduates are no longer being able to get employment because we now have people who believe, and CEOs believe, that entry-level jobs can be done through AI because it's all about just facilitating a pipeline. It sucks, man. It really sucks.